Recently, a friend of mine, Heath, submitted me to me or sent me a video from another influencer predicting that the price of Bitcoin was going to crash soon. And he was saying it was going to happen because recently the Department of Justice got the green light or the go ahead to sell like 60 some odd thousand Bitcoin. And so he was predicting that this was going to crash the price of the market. So is that actually going to happen? I think that that's what Heath wanted to know. Some of you may be interested in this as well. And I want to talk about some of those. I talked about it in yesterday's Q&A on the channel, but I want to talk about it in a little bit briefer setting right now, or video that I can share with you. So things to consider. What is the purpose of selling Bitcoin? The main purpose to sell Bitcoin is to take profit, right? Or to make money by selling others Bitcoin, or to make, in this case, to make some money off of selling this Bitcoin. And there's people saying they should do this because it's at an all-time high and the Department of Justice can profit out of it, which is it's just a funny concept to me in general, trading a powerful asset like Bitcoin for a much less powerful asset like the U.S. dollar. And that's not picking on the U.S. dollar. The U.S. dollar is fiat. It's inflationary, which means it is designed to lose purchasing power. The policies of the Federal Reserve and the intentions of the federal government, they want to be able to increase the money supply over time, which is going to create inflation. They know that it's going to devalue the dollar. It's what they are going for. They want to devalue it by 2% a year on average, because they feel there's economists out there that feel that that's the best way to stimulate your economy. That's why they're doing it. This isn't some conspiracy theory. This isn't some whacked out idea. This is stuff that they talk about in plain sight every day. This is their purpose. So why would you trade something that is deflationary like Bitcoin for something that's inflationary? It's not a good move. That being said, the Department of Justice is not always motivated by profit. We'll talk about that in a minute. But let's talk about this first. Number 2 point to consider. What happens if you sell a ton of Bitcoin all at once? I think that's pretty easy for everybody to pick up on. It's going to increase the supply, and most likely that amount of Bitcoin is going to outstrip the supply or the demand, excuse me. So there'll be there'll be more supply than demand is the thinking, and that will drive the price of Bitcoin down. When you have more demand than supply, the price goes up. When you have more supply than demand, the price goes down. So is this in their best interest to do this, right? And obviously it's not, because if you dump a bunch of it on the market all at once, it is going to reduce the amount of money they are going to make, because it's going to reduce the price of Bitcoin. This is not good for them. I think there's people that are smart enough in there to know this, unless they're doing it for some ulterior motive. There are people out there claiming that because Trump wants to set up a strategic Bitcoin reserve, or he's talked about doing that, and there's other people who wanted to do it, that this would make it so they, harder for them, so a political jab. I don't know. It seems incredibly petty and pointless to me, but maybe there is that. Maybe they will dump it out. Maybe it will increase the price of Bitcoin. You could set it up so that you sold it slowly over time, which most people do when they're selling a lot of Bitcoin. There have been people in the past, including the United States government, who've sold tons of Bitcoin, and they've done it nice and slow over time. It doesn't tank the price. They're able to make more money, quote unquote, which again, that's that funny thing. Like, are you really making money if you sell Bitcoin for dollars? No. You might be transitioning it to cover expenses right now, which is one thing, but is it going to make you more money to put Bitcoin into dollars? No, it's not. It's not a profit-making move. Okay, so that being said, they would profit more by selling it slowly over time. This has happened before, like I said, with the federal government. They've done it themselves. All right, so another important part to consider in terms of that too is I was looking at this yesterday, and just the top 4 or 5 exchanges alone yesterday transacted something like $8 or $9 billion worth of Bitcoin in one day, just the top four. And there's tons of them out there, but what I would say to that is if you dump that amount of Bitcoin, 69,000, whatever it was, you're talking about roughly $6 billion, $6 to $7 billion worth of Bitcoin, somewhere in that range. It's going to get eaten up in one day. How much of an impact is that going to have? Really, it's like 0.5% of total Bitcoin supply or less. So I don't think I really, in laying this out for you, I hope you see, I think the influencer was writing this or creating this video in an attempt to get views, to create some sensationalism, get views. I don't think, as you can see here, I don't think this is going to happen. But not least the way that he laid it out. Now, last thing to consider, could the government profit more by keeping the Bitcoin? Yes, they could. Over time, that Bitcoin is going to continue to go up in price. Why? Because Bitcoin is the freest market out there, first of all, and it is the most, almost complete. I think it's the biggest factor. Other Bitcoiners might disagree with me on this, and I think it would be a good discussion to have, but I believe supply and demand is the biggest single driver of Bitcoin. Period. The end. And the new supply of Bitcoin is shrinking in half every 4 years, and the demand at this rate has been growing by more than double, much more than double every 4 years. So when you have something that's the demand for it is open ended and doubling, and the supply of it is decreasing and shrinking in half every 4 years, what does that tell you over time is going to happen to this asset, to Bitcoin? It's going to grow and grow and grow in price. So even if there's short-term bumps and whatever, that's fine. We're willing to weather those because we're thinking long-term. We're buying this for the long term. So could the government profit more by keeping the Bitcoin? Yes, they could. They could put themselves in a much better position. They could use that and all the other Bitcoin that they have, almost 200,000 Bitcoin amongst all the agencies. That could be a great start for a strategic Bitcoin reserve for the United States. It would be a smart money move. Now, important things to consider regarding that. The motive of the government is not to make profit. The government doesn't think that way. It's not set up that way. It's to manage the expenses of maintaining our country, right? The things that it needs to do, like setting up, funding Congress, funding the judicial system, funding our courts and lawyers and judges that handle the legal business of the United States, for protecting its borders and its interests, the military, things like that. And then, of course, the government spends a lot of money on other activities within the United States that they feel, or over time, people believe is going to bring benefits to the United States on all different levels. So they're not really set up to make profit. They're set up to spend money, right? So to find ways to get money through taxes and other things and to spend it. That's what they're motivated by, right? Not only that, but the momentum of the United States federal government is not to make wise monetary decisions for the future. What does that mean? So the momentum is different. It's like the direction it's heading, and in this case, the direction it's heading in a very strong way is not to do these things. It's not forward thinking. It is actually very near term. It's a very short-term focus, the United States government and its spending policies. It's trying to solve problems right now. It's not thinking about things down the road. If it was, we would not have the Social Security system that we have now. We wouldn't have a lot of the Medicaid system we have. It is so focused on money right now, spending money right now, solving problems right now. It is not forward thinking. And I think this is something that's going to prevent the U.S. government from making wiser decisions, even though I know there's people within the government that see that there's a better path. There is a momentum with everyone that's involved in government, from lobbyists to Congress to bureaucrats, that is sending it in a way that is not in our best long-term interest. The last thing I think you need to consider too is that there may be policies, bureaucrats or politicians, that would prevent the use of these funds for the creation of a strategic Bitcoin reserve. I'm not familiar with the policies of the DOJ. Maybe they have no other choice than to liquidate or sell the assets, the things of value that they seize from criminals and criminal activities. I'm not sure how that works. That may be something they just have to do no matter what. There may be bureaucrats who don't feel that's a wise use of it or what they should be doing, that completely don't understand Bitcoin is common. And I would It's not a judgment on them. It's just an observation that if you don't appreciate the value of Bitcoin, why would you want to keep it, right? And I think that there would be maybe bureaucrats or politicians that would prevent the use of funds for the creation of strategic Bitcoin reserves. So, anyways, just some things to think about. I don't think the price is going to crash anytime soon. Doesn't mean that we couldn't have lowering of prices, and that's fine. It's going to happen. We know we're going to be prepared for it. We're thinking long term. Over any 4-year period, you're not going to see Bitcoin drop in value. It's going to increase. Over a 20-year period, it's going to increase tremendously. And that's what you need to start thinking is we're buying this for not now, we're buying Bitcoin for 20 years from now, at least, right? This type of long-term thinking is what's going to help you become a better investor. It's going to spill over into so many areas of your life to where you're going to start thinking much more long term. It does have that. When we start thinking long term about any aspect of our life, it starts to bleed over into others. And long term thinking is good for us. And the funniest thing is long term thinking is usually it's what's best for us in the short term as well, because we start to make better decisions in the short term, preparing and planning for the long term that affect us very positively in the short term. So there we go. 11-minute video on this. I was hoping to go a little bit shorter, but it's like about a third of what I did yesterday. So hopefully this helps you out. You can watch this at 2 times speed and cut it down to 5.5 minutes. But yeah, I just wanted to respond to that question. Thank you, Heath. I don't think Bitcoin is in any danger of crashing the price of it anytime soon. You never know what could happen, but the DOJ selling Bitcoin onto the market, I just don't think it's going to have the effect that other people, other influencers / sensationalists think that it might have. So there you go, thought for the day.